says that state added more than 240,000 multifamily units between 2019 and 2023, while median rents rose by almost $500 per month, or 39%, from $1,238 to $1,719, the report found. And these days, if you are looking for an apartment, because trust me, I was doing that last year. If you can find a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment for around $1,200, that's a rundown apartment in the hood. That's what it is now. Go back 10 years, a $1,200 apartment, let's say about 15 years ago, a $1,200 apartment would have been 4 bedrooms. You're looking at about 4 bedrooms. Now, if you get a $1,200 apartment, that's a 1-bedroom apartment in the hood that's run down. The rent is too damn high, and it is high here in Florida, and it has exploded over the last damn near 4 years. And if you're living in the state of Florida and you feel like you're feeling the squeeze right now, you're not alone and you're not crazy, because this is exactly what's happening as we speak. So let's get into this, because I think that we need to have a come to Jesus moment about this system. And this system is completely unsustainable, and there's a lot that needs to be done in regards to it. So let's go to this here. Florida rent shot up by nearly 40% from 2019 to 2023. It says Florida's strong population growth has collided with limited housing supply, pushing rents beyond what many families can afford. So let's get here. Homelessness among Florida families rose by 28% in the last 3 years, a report from University of Florida found. A 2025 rental market study conducted by the UF Scheinberg Center for Housing Studies found that the rent for multifamily units in Florida rose by 39% between 2019 and 2023, as 1 million households entered the state. Wait 1 minute. Wait a damn minute. 1 million households. That means that some of y'all that came from Massachusetts, Illinois, Michigan, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, some of y'all came from, my goodness, some of y'all came from Virginia. Like, guess what? It has gotten super expensive. 1 million, not people, households. And I said this, and people didn't take me seriously. I said our population in Florida is exploding. Was I lying? No. This is one of the reasons why we had the whole I-4 Ultimate project. It was what, $26 billion, something north of that. It was billions of dollars just to widen the I-4 corridor that runs east to west here in Florida. That was a bill over somewhere north of $1 billion that we spent just to widen I-4, not to build high-speed public transit, but to build more roads for more cars. And I-4 still gets backed up. It still gets backed up. So has it really fixed the problem? No. No, it still hasn't fixed the problem. Because you need to get those people out of those cars and into high-speed rail. And most people in those cars, they're either 1 or 2 people per car. Oh yeah, sure, we add an express lane, but how many people want to spend money on that express lane? We can barely afford eggs. You think we're going to use that money that we would spend on eggs on the express lane? Please. And so the problem is that now our housing costs have skyrocketed. Let's continue on. It says Florida's strong population growth has collided with limited housing supply, pushing rents beyond what many families can afford. According to that report, an estimated 904,000 renting households earn less than 60% of the median income and pay more than 40% of their income on housing. It says Florida is not any different than most places, and we saw the extreme rise in rents going back to the pandemic days, and things have remained high as production pretty much came to a grinding halt for that period of time. It says that state added more than 240,000 multifamily units between 2019 and 2023, while median rents rose by almost $500 per month, or 39%, from $1,238 to $1,719, the report found. And these days, if you are looking for an apartment, because trust me, I was doing that last year. If you can find a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment for around $1,200, that's a rundown apartment in the hood. That's what it is now. Go back 10 years, a $1,200 apartment, let's say about 15 years ago, a $1,200 apartment would have been 4 bedrooms. You're looking at about 4 bedrooms. Now, if you get a $1,200 apartment, that's a 1-bedroom apartment in the hood that's run down. Because everybody and their mama moving here. Because we got snowbirds that want to stay here year long. And people go, well, you guys don't have to spend this much because you guys don't have a proper state income tax. Yeah, we don't have a state income tax, but also the cost of living doesn't make up for it. And we also don't have the services at a commensurate rate that the state should provide. And so we're still doing horribly. Let's continue on here. It says renting households includes at least one employed adult at 79% of units, and households occupied by their owners, 67% are working. We're still not producing as quickly as the need is overall. Nesbitt added that there's a great need for rental options for people making below 80% of the median income. Financially, it's difficult to produce units at that level. And so with the lack of units affordable at that level, the overall lack of supplies, we have high rent costs. And the reduction in that supply is relating to that growth in those that are now becoming homeless. The study found that the largest inflow of residents to the state stretched from St. Johns County to Lee County. Also, there's homelessness on the rise, says the report, using the Department of Housing and Urban Development and Florida Department of Education data estimates some 29,848 individuals in Florida are homeless, 6,049 of whom are unaccompanied youth. 6,049 of whom are unaccompanied youth. Guess who are overrepresented in that amount of youth? LGBTQ youth. Because you got some parents that are ashamed of their kids that want to kick their kids out because they want them to conform to something that they are not. So here's where identity and class converge. That also happens. These kids become homeless because, well, parents do not want them to be who they naturally are, so they got to get out the house. Even though, who is it really harming? So the report estimates that 41,847 families are doubled up with others or staying in hotels and motels. So remember that story that I talked about? I talked about it on, was it RBN? But I talked about it recently about how 72 families that were living in the Howard Johnson on I Drive got an eviction notice one day after they paid their rent, and now they're out of a house. They're out of not even a house. They're out of a hotel room that they were staying in, that they were living in, and so now some of them may be out on the street. We're talking about families here, and so that's part of that number of people that are living in these hotels and motels. If you're living in a hotel or motel, especially under duress, then guess what? You are homeless because you're living there under duress. You're not living there by free choice. And so therefore, guess what? Once you account for them, the homelessness rate is even higher. Now, and it says, or families doubled up with others, or, how many people are doubled up with others? It says 2025 homeless numbers represent a 14% increase for individuals and a 28% increase for families since the 2022 report. And isn't this supposed to be a state where they care about the family? And yet there's no family values when it comes to actually caring about people and remaining in housing. And then become homeless with kids. Instead of them actually truly helping you as a parent to be able to get yourself on your feet, they'd rather take your kids, put them in foster care, and then they'll give money to the foster parents to take care of the kid when that money actually could have went to you as a parent to help take care of your kid. And by the way, they'll be like, oh, that money's supposed to go towards the kid. But how can you take care of the kid without taking care of yourself as a parent? I mean, parents got to eat. Parents need a roof over their head. And it's just crazy. You don't live a separate life from your kids. It says Nesbitt said that down the line, there will be more supply as projects drawing on trust funds. The Live Local Act use land tools and property tax exemptions are built. When the units are being produced aren't necessarily matching what the greatest need is. That's why we're having this growing gap. As conversations ramp up about eliminating property taxes, Nesbitt says that he expects people to consider how it will affect low to moderate income homeowners and how it can be done equitably based on income and other factors. Here's the thing. Why don't we just stop trying to do this private-public partnership BS and actually let's just start doing just all public? And in order to fund it, let's just do state-owned or municipally owned public banks in order to build that infrastructure so that we don't have to worry about trying to do it through some nonprofit industrial complex program or some private company to be able to do it. Why not just do it that way? Because here's the thing. They're always going to want a return on investment. They're always going to want an ROI. For the state, there is no need for a return on investment when it comes to monetarily. The return on investment, it means that your citizens are able to live. That's the return on investment. That's it. That's all. And so then the incentive to increase prices or to raise prices dramatically doesn't really exist. If you want to increase prices in order to make sure that your operations are being paid for, like the maintenance workers are paid a living wage, the people who do the landscape are paid a living wage, and the buildings kept up to code in a proper way, then yeah. But that money that you're going to spend on that is going to be negligible. As far as trying to make profits, you're not going to need that because if you're building it through socialized housing, and yes, I said socialized housing, cry to your big bone mama about it, then guess what? People are actually going to be able to thrive. Because number one, you're not going to be charging them these obscene amounts of rent in order to be able to live. And if you want to do it as a program so that people can get more on their feet, fine. But at the same time, people should not be homeless within this state. Especially since we're giving billions of dollars to Israel, which they have free healthcare, free college, and free childcare. Instead, let's retain that money here in the state of Florida instead of getting bonds to Israel. Says many folks are experiencing that instability are part of our workforce. Most of the folks that this report calls out, these are folks that are working jobs and working many of the jobs that power our state's economy. Ron DeSantis said that the voters will be able to decide whether they want to pay property taxes or not during the 2026 election. He said his office is researching how it can be done. Now, Dominique Calabro said that the demand for affordable housing is not new to most households in Florida. As inflation and cost of living continue to increase, the cost of housing and other necessary basic needs of individuals to continue to be a financial challenge. The Live Local Act was a 2023 measure that gave tax breaks to developers creating multifamily residential properties for people making around or below the median income. Says Tax Watch recommended the legislator create tax credits for building homes affordable for middle-income families, credits to adapt historic properties, and low-income housing tax credit for rental properties to augment the federal credits. Florida Policy Institute advocated for restoration too. So thing is that if we're seeing this rise, who's to blame? I would say it's not just corporate landlords, but it's really landlords, period. Because ultimately, now you have to charge rent according to fair market value so that you can, make your money. Which being a landlord is not a job. I don't care what anybody says. Like just owning property and charging rent is not a job. And they'll say, well, we have to pay for the taxes. We have to pay to make sure place is maintained. And I'm like, well, why not just maintain and pay taxes on your own place? Like Xi Jinping said, houses are for living in, not for speculation. And then because you're hoarding all the housing, guess what? That's raising the prices. And it's inflating the prices as well. A lot of people are thinking to themselves, well, we just need to build more affordable housing. Well, technically, we actually have a pretty significant housing stock. All we need to do is just put them up the code, and we can actually use a public bank in order to be able to do that. And you can use that money to hire construction crews in order to be able to make sure they're built up the code. It's not that hard. Problem is that means that locks out private companies. But these private corporations are the reason why we're at this point anyway in the first place. We're at this point now because of private corporations. And so people who think to themselves, well, we just need to build more housing. It's like, yeah, we need to build more housing. But at the same time, that building the housing, it doesn't mean a damn thing if it's going to be profit driven. That's my biggest issue. Is that it's profit driven. And whenever something's profit driven, that means that somebody's going to get locked out. And if somebody gets locked out, that means somebody's going to die. And the costs of living have expanded so much to the point where you now need to make at least $37 an hour in the state of Florida in order to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And it's increasing day by day, year by year, in other places as well. Let me share this with you as well. Credit to Roger Meadows for this. And then I will also get to this photo as well that I wanted to share with you guys. But here is the National Low Income Housing Out of Reach report that's done every single year. And here it is in Florida for 2025. If it will load. Hello. All right, there we go. All right. So you need to make $37.27 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in the state of Florida. Here are the 5 most expensive areas in Florida: Fort Lauderdale, Miami Beach, Monroe County, West Palm, Boca Raton, and then Tampa, St. Petersburg, Clearwater. And last year, Orlando area was one of the top in the top 5. I think it probably slipped down to number 6, but it's still within the top 10. And so in Fort Lauderdale, you need to make at least $45 an hour in order to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, which is crazy. We're at a point now where you're nearing having to make 6 figures in order to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And that's wild to me. Absolutely insane. And when we say this is unsustainable, we mean this is unsustainable. People are not going to be able to live. So now you're going to have a whole bunch of homeless people out in the streets. And then guess what? They're already making homelessness criminalized. So if you're going to be out in these streets and you criminalize homelessness, what's going to happen? Chattel slavery comes back, because slavery still has an exception if you're duly convicted for a crime. So if you're duly convicted for being homeless, guess what? You're going to get a home, but you're going to get a home behind bars. And they're going to force you to work for these corporations, which means chattel slavery comes back. Let me share this with y'all. This says, Texas, Florida lead in financial distress. Lone Star and Sunshine states top the list with the most people in financial distress. So states with people with most financial distress, the ones that are in the blue are less financial distress. And the ones in the red are the ones that are most financial distress, and the ones in the middle are closest to white. And as you can see, it's not just red states, it's blue states and whatnot, what have you, right? So Texas and Florida both have the most. So as you can see there, Texas, Florida, and then Louisiana as well. So Louisiana is also included in this. Texas, Florida, Louisiana. And then you have Nevada, which is coming up behind. And then you also have South Carolina. Then you have Oklahoma, Mississippi, North Carolina, Kentucky. And then after them, then that's when you get to Georgia, Alabama, Arizona, California. And then you have Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, New York. Right? And so then you the one that's kind of like really in the middle is Utah and Nebraska. That's it. And kind of Pennsylvania. But these are states that literally are in financial distress. And so, as we see here, there's so many people that are going through it. And look, my rents have exploded exponentially. I think in 2019, my rent was like $950 at my last place. And then by the time we hit 2021, we were at I think we're at 1350, maybe 1350. Yeah. By 2022, I think around 2022, we were at 1350. And one of the members of the HOA board, because we were renters, one of the members of the HOA board convinced them to not raise our rent. Why? Because me and my mother were both on fixed incomes. I'm disabled and my mother's elderly, both on fixed incomes. And they're raising the rents on us. The cost of living increase in Social Security does not cover how much they were raising our rents. And their excuse was, well, we got to go by fair market value. Fair market value. Everybody else is renting for this much for a 2-bedroom. I don't care. Look, if everybody jumped off a bridge, does that mean you have to jump off a bridge too? And it's not like they're still paying a mortgage on the place. They own the place outright free and clear. The only thing they're responsible for is a property tax. That's it. So all the rest of our rent that they're getting is pure profit. And so they didn't need to raise our rent. They wanted to because they want that money. And so this is why it's so important for us to decommodify housing. Also, to get rid of private equity from owning housing, ban it, make it illegal. Private equity should not be owning housing. Private equity should not be owning anything in healthcare. Nothing in education. No, make it illegal. How can we do that, JB? Well, Florida's a ballot initiative state. If you live in a ballot initiative state, there's a lot you can do as far as direct democracy. You may not be able to end capitalism through direct democracy, through ballot initiatives, but you damn sure can slow some stuff down. So this is why I think it's so important that we dispense with the whole, oh, well, we just got to build more affordable housing. Well, yes, we got to build affordable housing. Number one, we got to build affordable housing. Well, affordable is subjective. Affordable for whom first? Because to a person that's homeless, free is affordable. Housing first. Give them housing and then everything else will follow. Don't make people jump through hoops just to be able to get through housing. No. Give them housing first. Trust me. They'll recover and then they will be able to do better once they have the housing. Once that's secured, they'll do a whole lot better. Finland is already doing it. Homelessness is damn near extinct in places like Cuba, North Korea, and China. They ain't got to worry about it. So let's do that. Well, you want me to pay for it? Yes, I want you to pay for it. Because we're a society. That's exactly how it works. You pay for education, yet your kids are grown. But guess what? Those kids that are grown, and your kids are grown, but guess what? You're paying for that education. Some of those kids that are educated are also part of the society that you depend on. You pay for the roads and bridges. Some of them roads you don't drive on, but you pay for them. You pay into Medicare, but guess what? It's not just going to just you. It's going to all your fellow people who are going to be over the age of 65. You pay. Some of y'all have state income tax that pay for your government representatives. Well, guess what? Not every representative is your representative, but it still goes to the representatives throughout the government. You don't use the police all the time, but guess what? It goes to the police. You don't use the fire department all the time, but it goes to the fire department. Y'all don't say nothing when it comes to war, especially money going to a genocidal state that's killing little brown kids and that wants to expand it to Africa. I don't hear y'all complaining about that. And then on top of that, why not just build a public bank? So you won't have to increase taxes that much. And if you care so much about your taxes increasing, well, guess what? If you're not making a huge amount of money, then you ain't got to worry about it. But the people who live in places like Alworth, Windermere, West Palm Beach, and those rich areas in Florida, oh, yeah. You exploit the people, guess what? You got to give back. Billionaires shouldn't exist anyway. I'm looking at you, John Morgan. Is the rent too damn high? You're damn sure it is. Guess what? We're going to fight for a system where it won't be too high. Hell, let's fight for a system where we won't have to rent at all. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here. 1. Forehead kisses.